This video discusses the difference between 2 and 3 wire grinder pumps and the pump seal and thermal options. A 2-wire pump will have 2 power leads that carry current and a ground wire, while a 3-wire pump will have 3 power leads that carry current, the common, main, and start windings, and also have a ground wire. For our discussions on 2 and 3 wire grinder pumps, we are talking about the pump windings that carry current and thus do not count the ground wire for our terminology. Grinder pumps can range from 1 to 7.5 horsepower. The 2-wire grinder pumps are usually less than 2 horsepower and can be single-phase 120, 208, or 230 volts. Notice the capacitors are installed inside the pump housing. The 3 internal main, common, and start windings of the motor are wired to the capacitor kit, and only 2 power leads exit the pump motor housing. A standard panel with ratings equal to the grinder pump may be used. If the grinder pump is a 3-wire style, then the capacitor kits need to be installed in the control panel. For 3-wire grinder pumps, you must choose a control panel that includes the capacitor kits inside the control panel. A grinder pump may include optional pump seal and thermal sensors. Information on whether the pump has seal and thermal sensors can be found in a product brochure, owner's installation and maintenance manual for the grinder pump, or by contacting the pump representative and asking for the information. Before we learn about the pump seal and thermal sensors, let's talk about a pump's integral thermal overload. All single-phase submersible pumps, including grinder pumps, have installed at the pump manufacturer's factory a thermal overload switch. The electrical symbol resembles back-to-back touching question marks. The pump's thermal overload switch is wired in series with the main pump winding inside the pump housing, and this is why we call it an integral thermal overload switch. The amps running through the motor windings also runs through the overload switch. If the pump is drawing amps higher than the rated full load amps, then heat buildup due to the extra amps will cause the overload switch to open. With the overload switch being open, power is interrupted to the main winding and the pump will turn off. It is important to note the control panel, however, is still applying voltage to the motor windings, and the green pump run indicator is still illuminated because control panel is still supplying voltage to the motor. As the integral overload cools, it will automatically close, and since the panel is still providing voltage to the motor windings, the pump will resume operation. The grinder pump may also be equipped with an optional thermal sensor, also called thermal switch, heat sensor, or over temperature switch. The pump manufacturer will install the thermal switch, which is different than the integral thermal overload, in that it will detect heat rise from the main winding, causing the thermal switch to open, and unlike the integral pump overload, which is installed in the motor winding and interrupts the power circuit, will instead be wired into the control circuit, which will interrupt power to the pump by turning off the magnetic motor contactor. Notice in the schematic that magnetic contactor coil M1 will de-energize and stop the pump if the pump thermal sensor activates. The thermal switch is usually a separate cable exiting the pump housing, which may also contain the pump seal leak sensor. The pump seal and thermal sensors must be connected to the designated terminal blocks inside the control panel. Now let's learn about the pump seal sensor, how they connect to the control panel. The pump seal sensor, also called moisture probes, leak sensors, or seal failure sensors, are positioned below the lower mechanical seal or within a seal cavity between the upper and lower mechanical seals in a dual seal design. The motor is sealed off from the wastewater, and if water breaches the first seal, water will gap and come in contact with the electrode probes. Each sensor probe is connected to a wire that will connect to the control panel terminals marked for the connection of the seal sensor probes. The control panel will use a liquid level relay called a seal fail relay, or the control panel may have a printed circuit board that is designed to sense the water gapping the pump seal sensor probes. When water gaps the pump's seal sensor probes, an indicator illuminates a seal failure and can also activate the panel's alarm system. If a seal failure indicator illuminates, the pump can still operate, but the pump should be serviced to fix the failed seal as soon as possible. In this video, we are talking about a seal sensor that consists of metal conductive probes that connect to a control panel, moisture or water detection circuit. Some pumps use internal miniature float switches that activate in water but not oil, and other pumps may use a special 4 to 20 milliamp monitoring circuit that detects either thermal overload or seal fail, depending on the amperage in the 4 to 20 milliamp loop. The control panel always has two terminals for the seal sensor because we just learned that when water gaps the sensor probes, the seal alarm is activated in the panel. Some pumps only use one seal electrode and then rely on the pump's ground wire that is connected to the motor chassis holding the metal bearing that holds the rotating shaft that is connected to the impeller. Therefore, a metal part on the pump is always in contact with water, which is connected to the pump ground wire, which must be connected to the control panel. So when you connect the single pump seal sensor to the control panel seal terminals, you will connect to one of the seal terminals in the panel. You will have to field install a jumper wire from the other panel seal terminal to the panel's ground lug. The seal sensor in the control panel will now activate with water gapping the pump motor chassis and the single probe sensor that touches water through a failed lower pump seal. Remember to check if your pump has optional seal and thermal sensors and select the appropriate control panel option codes when configuring your control panel on the Alderon website. Thanks for watching.